Morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Give it another minute or two and then we'll get rocking and rolling. All right. See who we got here. Good morning salutations to folks. I know it takes a few minutes to get on here. We'll wait another minute or two before we get going. I'm going to talk about training for a sub 19 minute 5K today. So it's a significant mile. Dimitri, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for coming on. You're always on here, man. I appreciate you coming on. So we're going to talk about sub 19 minute 5K today. So another milestone, a significant one for a lot of people. And we've already talked about sub 20, and we talked about sub 3:30 and sub 4 hour marathons as well. So alternating marathon and 5K training cycles in this particular sequence. I've got one more to go of each, a sub 3 hour marathon, and then training for sub 18 minute 5K. And then we're going to transition over per request to some middle distance stuff. So I'll be talking about 800 meters and 1500 meters a mile and things like that. And we'll go some more specifics once we get to it. What are you saying here? When is someone ready to start training for sub 19 after breaking? Well, that's the next progression point. So take a look at the training paces, right, in the sub 20 and see where you are in terms of how far under 20 minutes you've gotten. And then you see the difference between those training paces and the training paces here that you're working towards. And that gives you a point or a training point to which to build towards. Good morning, Ethan. Good morning. So you know, okay, I got to work my way from this to this. Now, some of them might be naturally progressive and easier for you to accomplish, and some might not be. So, and that'll tell you a lot about your current fitness. But the goal is to eventually build in blocks towards the next milestone. Now, whether it be 4-week blocks, 6-week blocks, or whatever, the goal is to get fitter. And as you get fitter, to increase the training paces for everything. Okay. And yep. Hang on, Dimitri. So that goal, that's the goal. That's the goal there. To build towards, sub 20 and sub 19. So make sure you watch that training video again if you didn't write it down, Dimitri, of the training paces. And I'm going to go over the training paces to build towards here. All right, and we'll go over that. Ryan, how you doing, buddy? Good morning. How are you? Let me go over the training paces, and I'll get to your question, Dimitri, before the video. But let's get to the specifics. This is about you guys. So let's go over the equivalent races for a sub 19 minute 5K. So you should be able to run a mile in about 5:48. So remember, testing yourself at a mile is an important building block because it gives you an idea of what your current fitness is, and then it helps you set your training paces around everything. And so it helps you kind of finagle not only what your easy runs and your steady runs and everything else is, but your workouts, intervals, threshold, and everything, and tempo. And I'll go over the specifics too. Your 3K equivalent at this point is 11:30, or should be, which is 6:10 per mile. The sub 19 minute, you're looking at about 6:22 per mile to get under 19 minutes for the 5K. Strength training, Eason, we'll get to that too today, but at least twice a week, running specific strength training. Your 10K equivalent based on a sub 19 should be 41:08, which is about 6:36 per mile. Half marathon equivalent 131:06, which is 6:57s, and the marathon equivalent would be 3:09:48, which is 7:14s. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if you run a sub 19 minute 5K, then you should be able to run that marathon time tomorrow. That just gives you an idea of your capabilities for the marathon based on what you're running for the 5K now. If you train towards it, this is what you're likely able to accomplish. So again, it's not you can run this tomorrow. It's you can accomplish this if you kind of set the next training cycle towards easy runs. The pace range, you're looking at 8:40 to 8:10 per mile. Steady runs, 8:10 to 7:40 per mile. So it's always like about a 30-second window. A progression run at this point will be going from the slow end of easy 8:40 to the fast end of steady, which is 7:40. So you have a minute range there. Okay. Aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold. Remember, your aerobic threshold is more of a 30 to 60 minute runs, generally at marathon pace. So it's going to be 6:50, 6:55 per mile. Your anaerobic threshold, which is the 20-minute continuous tempo, in some cases up to 25 minutes, but this is more of more in line with what you're talking about here. Actually, excuse me, aerobic threshold 7:10 to 7:05 per mile. the anaerobic threshold, 655 to 650 per mile. My correction there. Mr. Surge CJ, hey, how are you? You can train for sub 19 the same day you run sub 20. Well, if you're just getting under sub 20, you want to recover from it if that's a milestone, and then you set your new training paces. If that's a significant PR or PB or PR, then you reset your training paces. And I've said this in a lot of my videos: is you wait until you run a time trial or a race of some kind to tell you whether you're ready to increase the intensity of your training paces. You generally don't want to increase training volume and intensity at the same time, even though they're both signs of progression. It's generally one or the other. So increase the training paces when your body tells you that you're ready to increase training paces. The last thing you want to do is that it gets sick or hurt or both, and and then have a setback. So it's all gradual progression, small steps towards the next goal. And I know patience is not the most easy thing for a lot of us. We want results and we want them quickly, particularly as competitive athletes. But it's very, very important in this regards because, let's say you've broken, let's say you just gotten under 20 to 1950, and you have a couple of people on your team, guys or gals, that are at 1910, and they're looking to break 19. Well, trying to hang with them in workouts, or if it was the other way around, could be difficult. So, and what that means is their training paces are going to be more comfortable for them than it would be for you. You'd be hanging on for dear life, or they'd be hanging on for dear life. So and that's why training at the right training pace ranges is important, because some people will be hanging on for dear life, and some people will have a much smoother workout if they're not training in the right training paces. So it's important to train at the right paces so that you can continue to progress along the way gradually. But now, by default as well, if you're ready to run a sub 19, even if you're training at slower training paces, it'll happen on its own. And then you readjust training paces accordingly. But let either time trial or race dictate that for you instead of doing it for yourself, because you might not necessarily be ready to make the changes in intensity or increases in intensity. So how long does it generally take? Eason, it's a progression point for some. Like it could be quickly, it could be within a couple of weeks, or it could take several months or even longer than that. It depends on fitness level, ability level, age, lifestyles, a lot of things that go into it. And then, when you're coaching high school or college, you find somebody who's naturally talented, and at some point they're going to gravitate towards the paces that they're able to run at that point. And you might see some huge improvements, but then you might see a leveling off of improvement, and then that's when their current fitnesses generally or current ability levels are at that time, and then you start to set the training paces accordingly. So progression points will happen a little bit differently for everybody. So training at the right paces are very, very important for you. Moscow Marathon CEO can take 1 day or 10 years. Yeah, Mr. Surge is right. I mean, that's exactly right. It depends. It's different for everybody, and you could have 10 guys or 10 girls in a room, or 10 men and 10 women in a room, and give them all this exact same training program, and everybody could be responding differently to the training program. So, and that's where individualization of training comes into play. That's where it's so important to, address individual needs along the way too, and everybody's individual needs are different. So, find it difficult to go below 358 per kilometer. You train in Mumbai or condition. So yeah, Rich Rashik. If I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I apologize. Hot weather is, it can affect your training paces, and it depends on what type of volume are you training for, and are you, training for 5K? Are you training for longer races, shorter races, and whatnot? You can tweak your training in such a way that, to kind of ease things or ease the progression. But keep in mind too, if it's hot all the time, and I generally recommend it's because having been dark for several hours, the sun has not been beating on the ground and heat's not radiating upward towards you. If you train at night, then the sun's been on the ground, so you're going to be exposed to more heat training at night than you would be in the morning. So morning is ideal if you can in hot weather. Now I know it's not the perfect solution, but you'll have less amount of sun beating on you in both directions if you train in the morning. That makes sense. So that's the ideal time to train if you can. But give me some more specifics, Rashik, of what your training paces are and what you're looking at. I'll do a nutrition, Ryan. So let me write that down. Actually, nutrition video. So I am here. I'm going to accommodate all the requests. So I had a request for middle distance running. I'm working on that. I'll do a nutrition video for you too. So I'll definitely get to it. How should I train after been vaccination? If you're vaccinated, I mean, vaccination should not affect your training. I mean, if you're talking about COVID vaccination, I mean, not that I know of. You'll experience general soreness if you happen to get some symptoms and so on. You take a few easy days. Obviously, my rule of thumb is any day with a fever is a day off from running. So, and that applies to whether you've been vaccinated or just in general. If you have a fever that day, you don't run. You wait until your fever's under control, and then you can run again. If you have a head cold and stuff like that, you can run, but you have to modify the training. And just to give you a little sneak peek on nutrition, the way I look at it, Samir, how you doing, buddy? Think about a supermarket, right? Just look at it, a box. So let's say your dairy, your meats, your cheeses, your fruits, and the majority of stuff your body needs is on the outer part of the supermarket. With the exception of a few things, the majority of what your body does not need is in the aisles. So it's a simple way of looking at it in terms of nutrition, just to make shopping easier. But again, there's stuff in the aisles like beans and other things that your body needs, but most of what your body does need on a regular basis, particularly for running, is on the outer part of the supermarket. So take a look at it. Do a run around the supermarket. You'll notice the things that generally respond well and give you the most nutritional value are on the outsides. Marathon equivalent sub 19. In this particular situation, it's 3:09:48, which is 7:14 per mile. And again, I said it in the beginning, it doesn't necessarily mean you can go out and run that marathon tomorrow. That means this is your marathon capability based on what you're running for a sub 19-minute 5K. So you have to give yourself time to train for it. So you are training for a marathon in February before starting the cycle and thinking to improve your 5K. It's a good idea to work on improving your 5K. And if somebody's training for the marathon, you say you give yourself one cycle. Let's say you train for the marathon in the fall. So you give yourself 4 to 6 months. You recover, you get back to training again. And then I recommend, or I encourage folks to train for shorter stuff in the spring or vice versa in the seasons, and act as a speed development component for the marathon, and let the marathon act as a strength development component for shorter races. They complement each other if you do them in a way that enables you to recover and train at the same time. So, and they both, again, they work with each other. You know, one of the keys with marathon training is energy preservation, right? So you want to stay as efficient as possible, meaning lower center of gravity, efficient body movement. So speed development, hill training, 5K training, sprint training, all those things help in that regard. They'll help make you much more efficient. And I say this too a lot, is it's not like a 5K. If you have a bad day, you can come back the next week and run it again. Marathon, if you tank at 20 miles or if you fall apart at 20 miles, you can't come back the following week and do it. The recovery component's much more significant. And that's why being as efficient as possible is so important for the marathon, if that makes sense. How many hard days or speed days? For a 5K marathon, I generally, with the people I work with or coach, I generally do 2 hard days per week, but it varies. It depends on what time of season and how far away from the marathon or goal race you're at. I break it into 4 to 6 week blocks, and we focus on different things each block so that you're catching your key races while you're still on the upswing and not on the downturn. So it's a timing component, and it's also what your body can handle and how fit you are at the time and how you kind of schedule your season out as to how you kind of set that thing. But generally twice per day. But again, at some point when you train for the marathon, that one time per week is the long run. And there's some things incorporated within the long run. So, and it's not necessarily 2 hard speed days and a long run. In some cases, it might be, but it depends on what you can tolerate, what you can handle. So, and what point in time in season you're at. So, but generally, if you can handle 2 times per week, it's a good thing. It be semblance of consistency training along the way too. Double speed, nah. I generally don't have people double until they're at about 70 miles per week. But again, it differs for folks, what lifestyle, what type of job you work, how much time you can allocate to training. If you have to double, then you double. But I personally usually don't put people on doubles until they're at 70 miles. It just doesn't make sense to do it before that. You can do the training up to that point without doubles and recover sufficiently. That makes sense as well. And again, a hard day or a speed day can be the same thing. Sometimes they're not. So again, depends on where in the season you are. You know, speed fartleks are important, strength fartleks are important. So they're all where you put them in and how you put them in, when you put them in, all kind of matters, and how the training complements the rest of the training in each block of in each block of fitness is important, and it's an important progression point. It tells you how you're kind of developing. The reason why I do 4-week blocks too, because it takes 21 to 28 days for the body to adapt to a certain training stimulus. That's called periodization. So, and that's why I go back to not increasing volume or intensity at the same time. You increase one, right? Then you stay there, reevaluate, test yourself, and if you're ready to go back up, then you can go back up. If you're not, you stay there for a little bit while you make some tweaks to the training. Okay, the same thing applies going downward when you're tapering for a marathon. It's not necessarily tapering a whole bunch each week for 3 or 4 straight weeks, right? And mighty Mike, brother, man, how you doing, bro? Thank you, man. Thank you, brother. Um, it's the same applies going downward. So you cut volume and then you stay there for several weeks before you hit your race, so that your body has a chance to adapt. The last thing you want to do heading into a marathon is be off rhythm. And if you're tapering significantly for 3 or 4 consecutive weeks, your legs can be a little out of sync. So how you taper is important too. And I taper in long runs. You taper. It's got to be a gradual taper. Everything's got to be very gradual, and rather than drastic. That, so would losing weight help improve marathon? 5'11" around that varies per person too. You might not at that height and weight. I don't think you really need to. In my opinion, you don't really need to lose weight. But if you're training for a marathon, that generally happens on its own. Um, and Good, Rashik. I appreciate it, man. Good. Um, yeah, I mean, weight loss is going to weight loss effect is going to be different for folks. You might have someone who's 200 pounds trained for their first marathon. By default, that person is going to likely lose weight along the way, training for 12, 16, whatever weeks for the marathon. But if somebody who's more have a runner's build and it looks like 5'11" and 145, that's generally more of a runner's build. It's not going to really be as prominent as someone who's heavier. So, it's 190 pounds, 5'2". So, Samir, you would likely, I can't guarantee this, but you would likely lose weight, Samir, undergoing a marathon training cycle. But again, going in there with the goal of losing weight, isn't necessarily the best way to do it. Training for the marathon the right way that keeps you healthy is more what I recommend, and the weight loss will come by default. But setting yourself up to succeed for the marathon or the 5K, no matter what you're training for, is the ideal plan. If I can recommend that, can I make a video about running technique? I'm gonna write that down too. Yes, I can. Running technique and running form. Yep, I'll work on that too, Eason. Yep, this is good. It's building a stable of videos, so this is really, really good. So I appreciate these requests. Too heavy. I was thinking about losing 20. If you set yourself up, Samir, for marathon training, that weight loss will probably come off by default. If you're doing the long runs and the workouts and stuff, and your nutrition is on point, your recovery is on point, then you'll likely lose that weight. But I wouldn't try to force the weight loss. You want your body to respond to the training first, and then and along the way, if you're recovering and following proper nutrition protocol, the weight loss will come, and it'll be the right amount of weight loss. It wouldn't be, or losing it the right way, I should say, or in a more ideal manner, and not drastic weight cutting and stuff, because you might not feel that great come marathon. And this happens with fighters. Sometimes they do a drastic weight cut and they don't feel right in fight night. So weight loss it's you have to be careful around that stuff. You really do. Tempo repetitions at 17 per kilometer last week. Brian, that's solid, man. That's solid. Actually, let's go back to this, because I didn't give you the specifics on some other stuff yet. So let's go to threshold running, okay? Cruise intervals, or cruise 800s, 1000s, 1200s miles. So threshold pace for 800 meter reps would be 322 to 323 per rep, okay? 1 minute recovery. For 1,000 meter repeats, also 1 minute recovery, 412 to 414, okay? 1 minute recovery. 1,200 meter reps, 503 to 506, 75-second recovery, or 115. Mile reps, or 1,600 meter reps, 650 to 646, 90-second recovery, or 130 recovery. Okay, that's threshold training. Also, an important component to training for the 5K in a lot of different ways. Interval training, 1600 meter reps, 616 to 620. So it's pretty much a 5K pace, or slightly faster. You're looking at about 4-minute recovery after the mile reps. Okay, 1200 meters, 442 to 439, 3-minute recovery. Okay, 1000-meter reps, 352 to 354 with a 230 recovery. 800-meter reps, 306 to 307 with a 2-minute recovery. 400-meter reps, 130 to 131 each, 75-second recovery. That's now you're getting close to the 3K pace. 300-meter reps, 65 to 66 seconds, 60-second recovery. Now you're floating between 3K and mile pace. And 200-meter reps, mile pace, and slightly faster, 42 to 43 seconds per rep, 45 seconds recovery. Okay, how you incorporate them is important as well. And I'll get you into some workouts. So let me just check out some questions here. Cutting off. There's no guarantee that cutting it, Samir, will make you run faster. That's the thing. If the goal is strictly drastic weight cutting, I would avoid that. If you're doing the right training for the marathon, like I said, the weight loss will come off on its own, and you'll also be setting yourself up for success for the actual marathon. So I think that's an ideal way of doing it. But again, everybody's different. So everybody's needs and physiological and physical needs are different. So it's what you can tolerate, what you recover from, and and also fitting it into your lifestyle as well. So, and Ming Hung Jun, and Do Eason. Ming Hung Jun, hello. Strength training after the easy run, or during cross training days. Well, strength training will essentially be your cross training day anyway. That'll be let's say it's a swim day or a bike day. You bike and then you do a functional strength training routine. That's a good time to do it. Generally, Monday or Tuesday after an easy run or a workout is a good day to do functional strength training routine as well. And again, these strength training routines I would recommend are 15 to 20 minutes long. They're not hours. They're not an hour long. You don't need to do that much training for the marathon if you're doing the right things. So, Ryan, it's my pleasure, man. You're welcome. How about we get into some actual workouts? I'm going to give you 3 early season workouts, 3 mid-season, and 3 late season workouts. Okay. So early season workouts, 4 to 5 times a 1200 with a 2-minute recovery at 5K pace. Okay. That's workout 1. Workout 2 is 5 to 6 times 800 meters with a 230 recovery at 3K pace. So again, 3K equivalent pace here is a 610 per mile. So you're looking at 304 to 305 for these 800 meter reps. Okay. And look at the volume. You're building up towards 5 to 6K worth of total volume. Okay. And the last one, we'd be building towards that 20-minute tempo run. You take a 4-minute active recovery. Okay. And then 3 times at 300 meters with a 100-meter jog on the back end at about 3K to mile pace for turnover. You need to know what it feels like turning over when you're already fatigued. And doing that after a tempo run does that. Remember, this is a 20-minute anaerobic threshold tempo. So here, you're looking at 655 to 650 per mile. That's the pace you want to be building towards. And don't worry if you can't get to 20 minutes right away from the bat. Okay, so remember, you can break it into pieces. So, and I also put that video down below of how to build towards a 20-minute tempo run in pieces. But try 2 times 10-minute first, or 2 times 8-minute first, and then see how that feels, and then progress towards a 20-minute consecutive run. Okay, so those are early season workouts. Strength training, my pleasure, man. How about mid-season workouts? Let's get to some mid-season stuff. Okay, the first one is 2 sets of 3 times 1,000. Okay, so it's 6 times 1,000 total, but it's broken up into 2 sets. The first set, so if you go back to whole pace here, you do them in 414 per rep with a 1-minute recovery. After the third one, you take a 5 to 6 minute recovery total, and then we come back and do 3 more at 5K pace, okay, with a 2-minute recovery. So now you're looking at 347 to 348 per rep, right around there. So it's 6 times 1,000 total, but doing half threshold and half at race pace helps you kind of transition mid-season to start doing it in such a way so you're transitioning over, you're starting to infuse some more race pace stuff into your training, but not doing too much, and then transitioning to the most intense part of the training and the more race-based stuff towards the end of the season. So rather than doing too much of too hard stuff in the beginning and then running your best race 4 to 6 weeks early, this sets you up to run your best when it counts the most, when you want to run your best at the end of the season. Okay. So that's workout one. Workout two, 2 sets again. This one is 1600, 1000, 400. Okay. So you run a mile, 1,000 meter rep, and 400. So the mile rep is going to be at about 5K pace, if you can. Okay. So that's 622 to 623, right around there. You take a 3-minute recovery, then you run a 1,000 meter rep at the same pace, 347 to 348, or slightly faster if you can. You take a 2-minute recovery, and then you run a 400 at 3K to mile pace. So you're looking at anywhere between 87 and 90 seconds, 127 and 130 for the 400. Okay. After the 400, you take a 6 to 8 minute active recovery, always active recovery. Keep your heart rate up, get us some fuel if you need to. And then you repeat that same thing again. The total volume itself, you look it up, 2,600, 3,000, 6,000 meters worth of running. Okay. You can do over distance if you prepare yourself for it. And again, this is mid season. So the early season, you're likely doing some of the early workouts or some threshold stuff and some tempo running. Now you're starting to incorporate both into the workouts. Okay. And if you're a coach, you know mid-season is generally when the bigger invitationals start coming, the more intense racing starts coming. So it's starting to infuse this stuff will get your athletes ready to go out harder, to finish faster, and stuff like that. So all important components of the training. The last one is 600-meter reps. These is rhythm reps. Okay, so you're building towards. Remember, you're building towards these. Okay, at these paces and these amount of reps. So just because you can't do this volume in the beginning, that's okay. You're building towards this stuff. Okay, over time. So it's 9 to 10 times 600 meters with a 200-meter jog recovery actively at 5K pace. Okay, and it's just rhythm work. It's 5,400 to 6,000 meters worth of running at 5K pace again, but rhythm work. Now, see, this is a good idea because some folks can handle 600, some folks can't handle 800s just yet, so 600s are ideal. Some folks can't handle 1,000, so 800s are ideal. Some folks can't handle 1,200, so you have 1,000. So you have lots of different options here, and you build towards the longer ones over time. So what you can handle is what you can handle. Okay, but the reason why I'm giving you so many options is because you're working with a bunch of athletes, and not everybody's going to respond the same way to training. So we kind of mentioned that earlier. So these are options that you have at your disposal, especially as a coach. How often should we run a 5K to test our progression? You don't necessarily have to run a 5K along the way, Eason. You can run a 3K, and I have folks run a mile time trial along the way too. But I'm going to give you a late season workout, which actually addresses this question too. So let's go to the late season workouts, and it's the first one actually. So at about 10 or 11 days out from your goal 5K, try to do a 3K at your goal 5K pace. Okay, you need to know what it feels like to reach 3K or 2 miles at your goal pace. Okay. At that point, you take about an 8-minute active recovery. And then on the back end, you do a couple of maybe 4 to 5 times 600 or 5 to 6 times a 500 at 5K down to 3K pace with a 200-meter recovery just for some more rhythm work and a little bit of turnover towards the end. You need to know what it feels like to be at 3K at that pace. And then you need to know what it feels like to continue doing more work after a long rep like this. So it simulates turning over or maintaining that pace when you're already fatigued. And that's generally what you'll feel like when you hit a 3K or when you're at 5K pace at 3K in a race. You're like, okay, can I continue holding this pace? Well, these types of workouts help teach you to do that. Okay, so that's a good one, Eason. Another one is 5 to 6 times 1,000 meter with a 230 recovery at your goal 5K pace. So if the goal is sub 19, you're looking at 346 to 348 per rep. You want to knock them out. Rhythm work. Okay. And you could be able to run as well. And lastly, this is a workout. This is actually one's called the Michigan, but it's a good way of really, really testing your sharpness. You do a mile. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, but since it's a late season, kind of paring down the recovery components, you do a mile at goal 5K pace. Take a 4-minute active recovery, or you jog an 800 meters in between. Okay. Then you do a 1,200-meter effort at slightly faster than 5K pace, okay, with a 3-minute recovery or a 600-meter jog after the rep. You're jogging half the distance of the rep, okay? And if you still have a little bit of time for 3 minutes and 4 minutes, you continue to hold that recovery. Then you do an 800-meter effort at 3K pace, okay, equivalent 3K pace. So here you're looking at 304 to 305 for the 800-meter rep. you take a 2-minute recovery or jog a 400 afterward, and then you run a 400 as hard as you can. These are 4 good pieces to help test your sharpness and your fitness at the same time and your race readiness. And it simulates getting faster throughout a workout. So just like some progression runs do as well. You need to know what it feels like, because there are going to be certain races where guys or gals will go out hard and you might not be ready for it. So the last thing you want to do is run their race. You want to run your race or have them run your race. So, but these types of workouts put you in a position to either maintain pace or get faster along the way. So different type of racing strategy, but it's helpful when the races start getting more intense, because people can kick from 400 meters out. They can kick, like if you look at the Olympics, they'll kick from a mile out. You don't really know what to expect until it actually happens. But the more ready you are for different scenarios, the better off you're going to be. Okay, and that doesn't matter if you're going for sub 19, if you're going for sub 15, doesn't matter. Okay. Oh, by the way, Dimitri, 15:10. Does higher mileage per week result in faster improvement? Doesn't guarantee that for everybody. Some people can handle high mileage. Some people need it. Some people need lower mileage. Again, it depends on what you can tolerate. But if over time, and my recommendation, my general rule of thumb is increase volume by no more than 5 to 10% in a year. So if you're running 60 miles a week this week, I don't go above 70 the following year in terms of average per week. Okay. And that's an important progression point. Some folks will go from 60 and they're like, well, these guys are doing 85, 90, and they try to do that and they wind up getting sick and hurt and wondering why. If your body doesn't tell you you're ready for it, exercise caution. And again, should be methodical or gradual. You either increase volume or intensity, not both at the same time. But to answer it in simpler forms, Eason, it'll help some, if it might not help others. That's where the individualized component comes into play. You figure out over time what your volume is and what you can handle. And at some point, if you see a plateau in your kind of training and performance, you go back and look. And this is where I'm kind of writing down or documenting your training helps. Look and say, okay, I've been here. We've been doing this stuff for a while now. Haven't been getting any better. It gives you a chance to go back and look and say, okay, I might need to increase this or that and whatnot. I might need to make some changes here. And then you can see what your body's responding to and what your body's not responding to. So it's good to reevaluate your training after a season and incorporate some things that worked and bring them forward, and stuff that might not have worked, you can move on from or modify so that you can keep progressing. If you don't want to repeat the same cycle 6 times in a row. At some point, it's not going to work the way that it did before. So that's where adjusting your training comes into play. Does that make sense, Eason? Is what I'm saying making sense, folks? You guys have any other questions in terms of this sub 19 5K? Remember, these are the paces that I gave you today, are the ones that you're building towards. So training at your current fitness is important. And again, testing yourself along the way. If there's no races available to you, then you test yourself at a mile or 3K or 2 miles or even a mile and a half to see where you're at. And then, if all of a sudden you went from a 5:48 mile, now you're on a 5:26, 5:34, you can make some modifications in the training, but not until that point. So, and if you run a big PR along the way, then it may actually need a little bit more. You may need a little bit more recovery time as well from a big PR. So, you're welcome, Eason. You're welcome. And so there's a lot of components to it. And again, it might take you a couple of weeks. It might take you a year to get there, but it doesn't matter as long as you're doing the right things along the way. And again, you do what you listen to your body. You know your body more than coaches do. So if something doesn't feel right, if you have a coach, talk to your coach. Say, this doesn't feel right. I'm not recovering well from this. And that's where they can help modify your training to help you continue progressing and to keep you healthy. Because you need to do weight training also I would, if you have time, if you have time to do like a running specific weight training or functional circuit, and I'm going to put together a video. Somebody requested this, so I'm going to put a video together for you. If you have time to do it twice per week, I encourage you to do it. In the meantime, things like your abdominal work, your sit-ups, your lower back extensions. But if I could recommend anything before a strength routine, it would be a flexibility routine. Make sure that you're putting those WD-40 on your joints and ligaments and muscles before doing anything. Make sure that things are firing on all cylinders before you start incorporating strength stuff. So a good flexibility routine You guys know I'm a Wharton certified musculoskeletal flexibility therapist. I've been for 20 years now, and I live by that. And as a former competitive runner and a longtime martial artist, it's really, and just somebody who wants to feel good throughout the day. I mean, I've had clients who are construction workers, opera singers, and this type of stretching routine helps all those folks. It can help open up your chest cavity for projecting voice in opera. It can help feeling better after doing hard labor drilling and all kinds of stuff. It's a routine that's built for everyday life, but it's specifically ideal for running and sport activities because it helps in a very functional way. That makes sense too. My training the mind, yeah. I mean, visualization is a good thing, but a good stretch routine. Take a look at active isolated flexibility. If I can recommend anyone, it would be that. If you have a routine of your own, okay. But if you don't, I recommend Active Isolated Flexibility by Jim and Phil Wharton. You'll see a lot of videos on YouTube, and I actually have 2 on my channel itself. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and that bell icon so that you won't miss future videos, but you have access to the 200 plus I've already put out. I do a fully running specific stretch routine, and it takes you through from lower body all the way to upper body, and you will feel miles different than you did before. I'm telling you, it was a lifesaver for myself and so many folks. I know my best friend Mike, he's an active isolated flexibility therapist as well. He was on here earlier. We both, that's a lifestyle for us. We do it religiously, and and it helps you feel better throughout the day. Night helps you sleep better, and just I like feeling better. If you get up stiff one day from bed, you do a routine like this, you'll feel better. You feel better. So, and the key is just gradual improvement. But does anybody have any other questions? I'm happy to answer them while I'm here. I've got a few more minutes. I hope you found this stuff helpful. I hope you wrote it down. And again, please, go back to the video and refer to it. What I'm going to be doing moving forward is I'm starting to work on putting together PowerPoints so that I can PowerPoint present along while I'm up here. So when I'm talking, you'll see stuff, the paces and things like that alongside of me talking about it. So that way, because I don't know whether you write things down or pause and write things down and whatnot, but I want you to be able to physically see it as well. So I'm putting together some PowerPoint stuff. So in the near future, that will be incorporated into the videos too. It'll be much easier to write down. But hope you found this helpful. And any other questions? Any other questions? And again, check out my Instagram page, Top of the Line Running. Make sure you follow that as well, because I help promote this channel here. I help promote the Instagram on here and the running channel on there. So, and feel free to reach out to me directly, blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com, if you have any running specific questions or need individualized guidance. So I'm happy to help, and I'll make myself available if you need me. So, but everybody have a wonderful weekend. Train smart, train hard, and I'll talk to you next time.